Powered by Arkansas, for Arkansas. This is Inside Arkansas Live.
And welcome in Inside Arkansas Live here on this beautiful day here in the great state of Arkansas. I'm your host, John Neighbors, alongside Curtis Wilkerson and Andrew Ellis, and appreciate each and every one of you for making us a part of your afternoon this afternoon. Hope everybody's having a wonderful Thursday, as we're going to have plenty of things to talk about today. We're going to have got the SEC and some of the craziness going on there on the football and basketball side of things. Going to check out a little bit of some prop plays and some fun bets with Bet Saracen, because there is a lot of action going on with the college football playoff. We'll get into that. We'll get into the latest of the transfer portal. But, fellas, I know that you two, of course, went live and talked about the newest offensive line additions for the Razorbacks and did a great job with it. So we won't rehash too much of that. But, man, you know, we usually talk about our positive vibes and how we're feeling today, but it seems like the Razorback faithful, man, they're flying high right now. They feel all in right now on what's going on with this Razorback football program.
Yeah, I mean, as they should today. When good things happen, you know, celebrate it, man. And these two guys, Caden Kittler, the center out of UCF, and Corey Robinson, the tackle out of Georgia Tech, were high priorities. They were at the top of the not the want, like the need list, right? I mean, you got all these guys dipping out off an offensive line that was already bad. You had to come up with some quality replacements there, and both of these guys are good, particularly Robinson. We've talked about him a lot. I know that Andrew's super excited about him, or super high on him, and I am too. So a couple really nice pickups, and you know, especially in the case of Robinson, this is what I was looking for, and it's not just the needle mover. And like I said on our show earlier, my needle moved with this, but
mine too.
He said if there were guys out there, you know, and not all of them, but if there were some that they thought, man, we really want them, we got to have them, we'll overpay, we'll stretch it a little bit to get them. That's quite literally exactly what they did with Robinson, because he was off to Oklahoma tomorrow. But then, hey, sometimes you just got to drop a little bag and encourage them to not make that trip to Norman. That's exactly what happened. They got their guys. So job well done.
Yeah, absolutely. Job well done, particularly when you're talking about the offensive line, particularly when you're talking about good news. And I think that's, you made a good point of, when good news happens, you just need to take it for what it is. We can continue to have big picture conversations and continue to talk about this roster and what we think it's going to look like. Is Arkansas going to be able to compete in the SEC? All these questions are things that we have until August and September to talk about, and we will. But I do think it is important to just react to this news for what it is. And it's very good news. You mentioned I'm very high on Corey Robinson. I declared him a must get. Literally yesterday on the show, we were talking about, hey, if there's a position Arkansas needs to spend big on, it's offensive line. They went out and did that. And so for that, there's a lot more to talk about. There's a lot more to a football team. We'll talk about the D-line, the linebackers. But just for this O-line, I am very pleased with the moves that they made. I think Kittler's a solid piece. Like I think we spoke about it earlier on our stream. He's pretty similar to what Addison Nichols was giving you, which I know that, you know, to some fans that may sound bad, but Addison Nichols is a starting, reliable, serviceable, playable center in the SEC. I think Kittler is probably of that same ilk. But guys, I got some numbers I want to throw at you real quick. So Arkansas this past season, in terms of pressures allowed on their offensive line, Josh Braun allowed 10. Addison Nichols allowed 13. Fernando Carmona out at left tackle allowed 17. Blackstock and Harris combined for 61. Ooh. 30 and 31 apiece. That was the bulk of Arkansas's issues. And those guys split time at right tackle. I mean, those numbers are kind of jarring if you really think about it. So look, those guys, and they wasn't all at right tackle. I mean, some of those, you know, some of it was left guard, some of it was right tackle. Those guys kind of switched around. But that goes to show you just how much of a hole Arkansas had at that other tackle spot. So now when you have a guy in Corey Robinson who has the number 5 pass block grade in the entire country among 600 qualified tackles, that's very encouraging. I feel like Carmona getting him back was a very important piece. I feel a lot better about Arkansas's tackle situation. I feel pretty solid about the center situation. I feel like Arkansas pretty much traded one for one there for the most part. I mean, you can make an argument a little bit here and there, but we'll see what they end up doing at guard, who ends up there. But as I said yesterday, I think guard is a position where you can figure it out a little bit easier. You can move a tackle, you can move a center, you can do whatever. And we'll see what Arkansas does, but I think they really needed to address that situation at right tackle. And we'll see if it ends up being Carmona that moves over or Robinson that moves over. But I feel really good about Arkansas on the edges of the offensive line, which again is kind of where they needed to improve at. And Corey Robinson, I mean, top 55 player in the entire portal. That's a needle mover. That's a bag drop. That's what we like to see. Congratulations.
Yeah, and I think to the point that, Curtis, you made in the beginning, that's kind of where I felt like where forget the players themselves, forget about, oh, well, are they better or worse? We can talk about that. But to me, it was more about finally feeling like that, where you have a player, it's like, hey, I'm interested in here, but I got to visit over to Oklahoma. And Arkansas goes, no, you don't. You're not going there. You're like, we're going to make this happen. And here's how. Boom, you get it. Because it felt like people who were either visiting to Arkansas or interested in Arkansas, they left and they're like, we'll see. We'll see. Because they either one felt like the offer that they were getting was not good enough. Two, they felt like they could get more at least from somewhere else. Or three, they just really weren't sold on much of anything at all, at least not enough to say, hey, I'm fully in. I'm all in on this. And so that to me was what was the nicest part about this is that, yes, he did have another visit to another SEC school, to another big time SEC school. And Arkansas made sure that didn't even have to take place. That didn't even need to happen. You don't need to go to take a visit. You don't need to find out how much they're going to give you. You don't need to even ask them to counter the offer. Nope. You're coming here and you're going to be an offensive lineman here at Arkansas. So that to me was what made things a little bit more positive on that end. You still, again, we got work to do. We got all these things that you got to talk about and everything, but it was just nice to get a win in that regard. Beat another SEC school in something. And in this way, it was a transfer portal and it was a nice get. So to me, that was the nicest thing, or at least the most important thing from getting someone like Cam Robinson.
Yeah. I mean, at the sake of using a cliche here, put your money where your mouth is, Sam. And he did that. Because he kept saying over and over, we got money. We got money. We got to stretch it. We'll stretch it. We can do this. We can do that. And then, it's like, okay, well, we'll wait and see. And so now he kind of, he validated himself a little bit, which is good to see. Now, the question is, because I know that they had to pay up for at least one of those guys. I'm not sure what Kittler's situation was like, but are you in a position where, like you've got funny money that you can still go out there and spend, or is the budget tightened up now? Like, we'll see. But you had to prioritize or at least start that process somewhere. And like we said, like I'm glad they started in the trenches there on the offensive line, which interestingly enough, Andrew, we were talking about it on the live stream a few minutes ago about like, okay, you got Kittler, you got Corey Robinson, you went and got McCroy, you lost 3, you picked up 3. Are they done on the offensive line? Probably. I'm told that they're still actively looking to add a 4th in the portal. So I'm assuming that's going to be on the interior, probably a guard, but they're overhauling that sucker, man. Like we've talked about, can you rebuild these things in the transfer portal and it work? The book so far is that it's usually a struggle in year 1, but you got to go out. Like you have no choice. That's a position you're in. So you just rack up as much talent as you possibly can and roll with it. So I'm anxious to see what they do here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and kind of what we said earlier was that Arkansas just cannot afford to not have a pretty good offensive line next year. Like any path forward, and we'll continue to talk about what Arkansas needs to do, what Arkansas can do, but any case to be made for Arkansas being an improved team next year, they would have to have an above average offensive line at the very, very least. And actually, last year we thought Arkansas did a decent job in the portal of like improving their offensive line from one of the worst in the country in 2023. They were not good this past year, but they weren't one of the worst in the country. So I think they definitely have to continue that upward trajectory. And we were very skeptical about whether or not they could do it, especially when you had 3 starters that, by the way, everyone always says like, oh, your offensive line sucked and now you have 3 starters leave. Isn't that a good thing? Well, those weren't the 3 we were worried about. So that's why we were a little concerned there. And so look, will the 3 that they've brought in so far wind up being better? I think it's really it's about the same. They're pretty comparable. But again, I go back to the position that they upgraded. Like right tackle, Arkansas clearly has upgraded there, which is where they needed to. And so, look, we'll see. I think McCroy, the Oregon transfer, is kind of the big X factor in this whole thing. Curtis, you mentioned they might be bringing in another guy, which I think they probably should do, if nothing else, just for depth purposes, just to have another body in there to kind of mix, similar to kind of how they brought in Joe Moore this past year as the guy that if anyone went down, they were going to kind of mix Joe Moore in there. I think they need someone like that. But McCroy is really an X factor for me because, one, he's a former top 100 recruit. So you can make a real argument. He's the most talented guy that they have on the offensive line. Hasn't played a snap in college yet, but I'm very interested to hear kind of once he gets on campus, once they get into spring ball, what kind of stuff do we start hearing from him? Are they going to give him the Dan Skipper treatment? Is he going to be a a humongous 6'9" guard. Because look, if he is, I mean, I could, you know, I don't think that'd be the craziest thing in the world. Do they think, hey, this guy's actually a stud? Maybe he starts at right tackle. So maybe you move Carmona to guard or move Carmona to center or whatever you want to do. You can kind of have those options, but I think McCroy is kind of the X factor that will end up determining whether or not Arkansas really did upgrade in the portal. Because I think those 2 guard spots are still kind of up for grabs. They like Kobe Branham. Marion Harris, by the way, I'm not ready to give up on the kid. I know he had a really rough year. He struggled in his first year starting in the SEC, but they really like him. I think if they can get some weight on him, I'm not ready to give up on him. If he ends up being a pretty good player, I won't be surprised. But I do think it'll be interesting to see if they go out there and get another legit proven guy that can start at guard for them. But either way, I'm like pretty optimistic. And again, they really needed to get that tackle situation worked out. And so now if Carmona's the one where you would assume he stays at tackle for now, but if McCroy ends up being a real player, if they go out and get someone who's also a tackle, maybe you move Carmona around and then you have an overqualified left or right guard in Carmona. Like then I'd really start to kind of be like, okay, Arkansas's got something cooking here. But again, I think the rest of the roster is still going to be very much a work in progress. But as of today, as of December 19th, I am actually pretty optimistic that Arkansas is going to have a better offensive line all around, especially when you take into account that Kudus, who might be the most talented one they lost, didn't really play that. I mean, he only played 4 games. So I think there's a real case to be made that Arkansas has taken a step forward here.
Well, I'll tell you what, that's a good segue to get into our Alumni Hall question of the day presented by Alumni Hall, which also we really appreciate their partnership and our continued partnership because we are partnering through the entire 2025 year once again with Alumni Hall. So we appreciate them and all that they do for us. We're going to have some live shows there. We'll keep you updated on too, folks. But it's the ultimate Razorback shopping experience for all the Razorback apparel. They also have a great deal going on right now on social media. If you follow them on their Instagram or on their Twitter at Alumni Hall UArt, you can have a chance to enter into a $1,000 Alumni Hall gift card giveaway. So be sure to check them out at Alumni Hall and alumnihall.com. It's the ultimate Razorback shopping experience. And the question kind of was what you were referring to, Andrew, is simply asking the Razorback fans, did the offensive line officially upgrade from what it was a year ago, given the new portal additions? And I will admit, I was curious to see how this would go. And overwhelmingly, at 74%, Razorback fans say yes. The offensive line is officially upgraded from where it was a year ago. 19.7, so about 20% of you said it's about the same, and 6.3% of you said no. So if you do the math there, which I think I'm doing right, 94% roughly feel that the offensive line is not going to be worse next season given the additions. It's going to be just as good, if not better.
Well, that's prisoner of the moment mindset there. And very well may be right. I mean, here's what we know for sure. They damn sure upgraded at right tackle. I get it. Like people were excited about, Blackstock when he came in and everything, but that didn't really work out. I mean, I think the floor is a lot higher for a guy like Corey Robinson. There's no doubt in my mind they're better there, but I don't know that I'm ready to declare that across the board just yet. Because and the main reason is because we don't know about McCroy. We don't. He just hasn't played a down of college football yet. If he pops, hell yeah. I mean, like if his talent or his potential turns into production, then sure, you feel great about it. And to me, I feel like they just adequately replaced Addison Nichols with Kittler. Like I think it's kind of the same situation there. And that's fine because like we said earlier, I think that Addison Nichols was adequate. Like he was just fine as an SEC center. And I think Kittler will be too. So it all comes down to me is like how they wind this, wrap this thing up. If they go get another guy or if McCroy really pops, and sure. Yeah. I mean, I could be sold on that, but I don't know that I could go overwhelmingly like, oh, hell yeah, no doubt. It's way better because you did add a really good piece that upgraded you in Robinson, but you lost a really good piece that you still haven't necessarily replaced in Kudus. It just kind of depends on how things shake out and if they move stuff around. I'm not going to get too far into it, but my biggest pet peeve just in general, but of Sam Pittman too, is, oh, we got a perfectly fine tackle. Let's move him to center. Oh, we got a guard. Let's move him to tackle. I understand the cross-training thing, but they do that way too often. Sometimes it works out. Sometimes it doesn't. Shit gets on my nerves, man. Like if guys got a position, play him there. So we'll see. Like I'm not a big fan. I was hearing last night about Oh yeah, well they're planning on moving Carmona to center. That's why I'm glad they got Kittler, because I don't want to see that from left tackle to left guard or whatever. Okay, but the inside out. Oh, now you're going to snap the ball. It just seems like a little bit too much for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to note that like the 3 guys they lost with the 3 guys they brought in. It's not I mean, with Kittler and Nichols, I do view that as a pretty much a 1-for-1 trade. The other 2 are just very different situations. So I think if you're looking at this objectively, Arkansas really has to replace 2 guards. I know Kudus only played 4 games last year, but that was a guy that projecting into next year. You had him and Braun at guard. You'd feel really good about your guards. That's 2 experienced guys, one that's probably going to play in the NFL, and Kudus. Like that would make you feel pretty good. So I won't be able to definitively say, hey, Arkansas upgraded until we really find out the answer at guard. Now, look, I'm also we take Sam Pittman at his word a lot. If we get into spring ball, Curtis, and they say, look, we saw this McCroy kid. He's way better than we realized.
Yep.
He's going to be our starting right guard, and he's going to be a freaking damn good one. We think he's an NFL guy. I can actually be talked into that. I want to hear it first. Like, I want to see, like, I want him to be on campus and to be practicing and for them to have a better idea. Because really, I don't think they have a great idea of what he's going to be. I feel like he's the X factor here. And then you mentioned a guy that they might bring in a 4th offensive lineman. Maybe that is just a for sure left or right guard that like we can just pencil in and they're all fine there. But I do need to see what they do at guard before I can definitively say Arkansas upgraded. I think they're on track, and I think they're going to have a good chance to. And I know they like Kobe Branham, and I mentioned Amarian Harris. I kind of made the case for him, but I don't know if you can for sure slam dunk say they improved their offensive line. But I do think like with Kudus not being able to give you a ton last year, I don't think they have that high of a bar to clear necessarily. So I do think there's a chance, but I think honestly, I'm surprised there weren't more people that were in the camp of it's about the same, because I do feel like right now it's probably closer to that.
Yeah. Three of the top 7 interior offensive linemen in the portal, according to On3 at least, have transferred out of Arkansas. Yeah. So that's my only thing there. Is like kind of like you said, because it's not a position by position. Like you lose 3, you gain 3, but it's not swap this guy for that guy. That's my only hesitation, really. I like the pieces they have.
Here's what we'll say. They're substantially better at tackle, just with Carmona being a year older and with Robinson, who's clearly an upgrade over both of the guys they had at right tackle. Guard, it's to be determined. Yeah. I would argue tackle's more important than guard, but you still do need guards. And so we'll see how that works out. But like, again, I do think it's, as of right now, about the same, and I'm kind of optimistic that they actually can improve.
Yeah, and to your comment too, Curtis, I'm glad you said it about the cross-training thing, because sometimes I feel like I'm the one that maybe is just an idiot when it comes to not liking that. It reminds me of when I play and have played the NCAA, college football EA Sports video game, where you go in there in the depth chart and you see a guy that's like an 89 overall at the tackle position, but if you move him over to center, he goes down to an 80. But your center there is at a 79. So you're like, oh, well, I should move this guy over here because it averages out. Because then you have suddenly, a better, like, instead of having an 89, an 85, an 85, an 80 or whatever, you kind of just average it out. And I don't like that, because to me, I would rather have an elite level tackle at tackle, even if he may be slightly better at the center position than your starting center. I want the elite guy out there. I want them to be in the best position possible. I know it's maybe a little bit different, but imagine in basketball where you were that way, where you had just a dominating center, just absolutely dominating, but you felt like if you move him to the power forward position, he's maybe a slight upgrade from your guy there in that position. So you just move him over, but it takes him out of position. It kind of, I'd rather have someone that's dominating at what they do. To me, that's what makes everything a lot better. So, but yeah, I don't think they're going to change that up, unfortunately. I think it's just going to be the way it is.
John, that reminds me of the NCAA 25 when you're doing the position changes in the middle of the offseason after a year, and like you're like, oh, we got this guy, he's really good. Oh, but we're moving him to left guard. Now he's 72. He's like, oh crap, now we got to figure that out. I've played that game many a times. I know what Sam Pittman's going through. I've been through that myself.
Yeah. Everybody can relate to it. He's played the EA Sports college football video game for sure.
I literally because it was kind of weird this morning for a number of reasons, because we were right in that window, first of all, where we've kind of said, all right, like if something happens within, an hour and a half, 2 hours ish of the of Inside Arkansas Live, we'll talk about it on the show. And so we were like kind of right on that window. And I was going to be, obviously very complimentary because I'm excited about Corey Robinson. But one of the things I was going to rant about in that live stream was like, okay, but then I'm already hearing, hearing from somebody within the program, they're going to move Carmona to center. And I was going to start teeing off on it. Like, I don't like that. I don't think you should do that. As we're setting up, I just pick up my phone and it's like, they got Kittler too, the center. So now I got to erase that from my notes. And then we had to redo the graphics and everything because we had it all set for Robinson. We're getting ready to start. And we're like, oh, shit. I guess we better add this dude. So it was kind of a wild morning, but I'm with you. I understand the cross training stuff. I know it's not as simple on like the 2-deep depth chart that they release where it's like, so-and-so is listed as the backup left tackle. It'll definitely be him if Carmona goes out. That's not really how it works, but I hate especially if you're like a multi-year starter or whatever at one spot. Yeah, we're gonna move you inside now. It's like, I don't know.
Yeah, I just want the best players to be at the best positions. I don't care like what it is or how it is. If you suffer a little bit at center, but yet your tackle is keeping your quarterback upright from his blind side, I'm okay with that. I'm willing to sacrifice that if that is the case. So I'm just hopeful that that's what happens. But folks, we'll get to a few of your chats here on the show. Appreciate each and every one of you listening in and watching in and everything. I got a super chat here from Christopher Cox. Appreciate you, Christopher, for the super chat. As always, he says, offensive line is obviously going to get better. What about the defensive line, though? Which is obviously something that we all agree. Trench play is everything. And I think the O-line was a bigger priority, but you definitely got to continue to improve the D-line, too.
Objectively speaking, and we've been very nice here on the show. We're willing to let it play out. Objectively speaking, it is not looking good for the Arkansas defensive line. Let's just be real. The two best players on the defensive line this past year were Landon Jackson and Eric Gregory. Those were like your two stalwart. Like you had those guys. You knew they were very stable. Both those guys are gone, so you got to replace them. You've also got Nico Davier, who's a starter. Didn't give you a ton of production, but you still got to replace him. June Kodge was the guy that started games. Didn't give you much production. You still got to replace him as well. And so Quincy Rhodes, I like. Cam Ball, I really like. And even Jaffrard, I can get behind. But Arkansas's got just a numbers issue. Like, they just don't have that many defensive linemen who have played football. Ken Talley, they get from Michigan State. I mean, you need a body, but hasn't played a ton of football, hasn't produced a ton. So it's like they just really don't have much returning production at all. And I don't see them connected to a ton of guys in the portal. Obviously, you're 2 or 3 moves away from me feeling very different, and I will gladly readjust my expectations if they go out there and land guys, but I don't see those guys in the portal connected to Arkansas necessarily. So defensive line is very much like the new position that I'm a little worried about it, but I'm willing to let it play out.
Yeah, you got to get the Jarrett kid, the big fella from Georgia, I think at this point. Now I know he's at least tentatively scheduled to be at USC, for a visit. So we'll see. But you get him, and then all of a sudden you would have him, you'd have Cam Ball, you'd have Ian Jaffrard. It's kind of a 3-man rotation there at defensive tackle. I feel like they need 8. They were playing with 5 or 6, and sometimes they weren't even confident in that. But they got to go get edge rushers who can get to the court. Man, it's such a big deal in the SEC, man. And I'm excited about the Quincy Rhodes and his potential. Same thing with some of those young guys; they just haven't done it yet. You gotta go out and get a guy who's kind of been there, done that, and proven it. And like, you had to pay up to get your right tackle. You're going to have to pay up to get that edge rusher. Like, so if you're looking for another area where I think they might need to overpay, to me, that's probably it. I think it's really, really important.
One thing I'll add on that is a lot of people immediately point to, well, hey, what about Charlie Collins? What about, Kavion Henderson, who are young guys that were true freshmen that Charlie Collins played a little bit here. He played in that A&M game. I can see the vision for those of like those guys that, hey, you develop them. Maybe they turn into stars for you. Potentially. That'd be awesome. But the problem is, like you said, Arkansas was playing with 5 or 6 defensive linemen last year a lot. And they openly chose to just have a short rotation rather than playing those guys. Now, it's not to say that they made the wrong decision. That's not to say that those guys can't get better but are they really going to go from guys that you wouldn't play at all to real difference makers in the SEC in 1 year as redshirt freshmen or sophomores? Maybe, but I think that's counting on that to happen is probably not the way to go about it. But again, same thing where if we get into spring ball and they're like, dude, Charlie Collins has flip the switch. That dude is just a monster now. Okay, maybe I'll feel differently, but I don't know if anybody should be really banking on young guys to just randomly become difference makers in the SEC.
Blake brought this up in the chat too, and know that a couple of us retweeted it. But UNLV starting left tackles Jalen St. John entered into the portal.
Hell
Y'all
yeah.
remember him? So here's the thing: he's been a 2-year starter there at UNLV. I did not realize he was all Mountain West though this past season. So, but you think about there's a connection there and whatnot. Well, if he's a left tackle, I mean, like at the tackle position, we've just been talking about how they've upgraded in the tackle spot. I don't know, but anyways, it's just something funny to
Sounds
watch.
like a great fit as a Boilermaker to me.
Yeah. I think that would be probably the more likely destination if that ended up being the case. Let's see. This comes from Hickory Hog. He says, we're halfway up the mountain on our way to having a team. Only problem is we're halfway up Pinnacle and Ole Miss is on top of Kilimanjaro. Yeah.
I mean,
that's true.
It's fair. I mean, it's pretty well put. I'm definitely excited about the additions that Arkansas made today. And I mean, I could be pretty impressed if they wind up adding a handful of the guys that they're, very firmly in the mix on here. But it is true. There's kind of a difference in viewing it from that lens of, okay, like replacing who you're losing. Are you doing a good job of that? Are you upgrading in certain spots? But then it's a completely different world. If you just kind of look out at some of these other schools in the SEC and what they're doing, it's just, I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, it's a fair and valid point.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, and kind of what we've said a few times now, like the case to be made for Arkansas has to be not in the talent department. Like Arkansas is going to be able to fill some spots. They're going to get plenty of guys. They'll fill some spots and they'll have guys. They'll have some talent, but they're not going to be a more talented team than Ole Miss, a more talented team than even an Auburn or an LSU. Mississippi State, we'll see. I mean, Mississippi State's done okay in the portal, but I think Arkansas, the case for Arkansas needs to be you've got enough in the talent department and you can overachieve with your development. You can overachieve with your culture and all these other things. But yeah, if you're just comparing purely a talent and what people have acquired in the portal, Arkansas is not going to win that race.
In fact, let's kind of transition here for your Arkansas update presented by Davis and Garrett Insurance, your independent auto owners insurance agency, securing what matters the most. Because we've talked about the offensive line, and I know you alluded to it a little bit, but there's a lot of interest in the Courtney Crutchfield situation. For those of you who may not remember, he was a wide receiver out of the state of Arkansas, one of the highly regarded players, number one player in the state type of situation for him, coming out of the state in Pine Bluff, and he went to Missouri. He originally committed to Arkansas, but then flipped and over to Missouri. Well, he's entered into the transfer portal at this point in time. And there are some beliefs, a little crystal ball action happening over there at 24/7 Sports that has him coming to Arkansas. So we mentioned wide receivers. We mentioned the guys that they've added into the mix already. What do we make of the possibility of a Courtney Crutchfield, who redshirted this past season, being a part of this Arkansas offense next season?
Yeah, I mean, it's in something, unless something just completely falls apart, it's happening. So I mean, that's cool. I think it's good. I think it's a really, really nice ad. I don't think it's enough at wide receiver is kind of where I'm at with it. You attack the portal in three ways. You get group of 5 guys who have been really, really productive where they were at, and you hope that it translates over to the SEC. You swing and you get some of the guys who've proven it already at a high level. Those are the ones you got to really pay up for. But then you got to get the guys who are super, super talented that maybe just haven't had the opportunity or it hasn't clicked or whatever. And you really hope it does with a change of scenery. Courtney Crutchfield, immense talent, didn't do anything at Missouri this year. They had Theo East, they had Luther Burden, really good wide receiver room. That's a tough field to get on over there. I understand that. So you bring him in and hope there's more opportunity, and that leads to production. And it should. I think he's a really good player, but that can't be your top get in the wide receiver room. You bring him in and you want to insert him as a starter. I'm fine. Sure. Be my guest. Go for it. And I'll be pumped up about it. And I hope they get him. You want to keep in-state kids in the state, even if they leave for a minute. So I'm fine with that. But if you get him and then go out and add a number 1, I'm happy. I'm pleased.
Yeah, I think Curtis, you pretty much nailed it there in terms of kind of how I view it. Of would be a nice get, would be something that I think a lot of fans would be excited about, and they probably should be. I mean, it's a super talented guy. I mean, he was, regardless of what site you're looking at, he was a top 250 guy in his class for sure. I mean, he's definitely talented. My only, I guess, hang up on it is like, why does him not playing at Missouri doesn't disqualify him from being good, but it also doesn't qualify him as good, And so it's like, we see it all the time. Guys that are difference makers who it doesn't work out at one school and then they go somewhere else and all of a sudden they're a difference maker. My only question is just like, well, how does that happen necessarily? How is he going to go from not being a guy that is in the rotation at Missouri to Arkansas's like top guy? I agree that like they would need to go out there and get some more proven guys, and a guy like Omega Blake would fit that criteria absolutely. But in terms of everybody that's like asking like, is it really going to happen? It seems like unless something weird happens, Crutchfield is at Arkansas. Like it seems like pretty much a foregone conclusion.
Yeah, and some people who will feel this way about any player, which I can understand the sentiment. They don't want a guy who said no to them in the beginning to now be part of Arkansas, especially if you go to a place like Missouri or whatever. Like, you don't want that. To me, I'm past that, and I don't really care. Can he help you? Can he help you win? Can he be a player that does something for you? I don't care where he came from. I don't care what he said. I don't care what he did. Is he all in, and is he going to play here, and is he going to be the guy here, and is he going to buy into what's going on? If the answer is yes, then let's go. I do not care about how much it costs or what he said or anything. Do not care. It's just something that nowadays you can't be picky. You can't just sit there and say, well, he said, he committed to us and he said no, he went elsewhere. Fine. Years gone by. Does he want to play for you now? Apparently so. So bring him on. I'm going to trust Petrino. I'm going to trust the offensive staff that if they feel like somebody like Crutchfield can help, bring him in. I'm fine with it. So I don't have that sentiment. Now, obviously, the expectation is going to come along with it too. Maybe I'm more of on the positive side of a Crutchfield because, hey, Missouri had some really good wide receivers, one of the best wide receivers in the country in Luther Burden. And he wasn't even their leading receiver this year, which was weird. But still, they had some pieces there. And it's not to say that he is going to be great here. I don't want to have people have that expectation. But I'm balancing it out to where maybe he just didn't get the opportunities because they had such a good wide receiver group. Or, as I've said before, wide receiver is the easiest position as a true freshman to play. And if you can play, you can play. And the fact that he didn't get any run this year, really, does that mean he's as good as what they're hoping to be? I'm not totally sure. But the point is, if he wants to come back and if Arkansas wants him, make it happen. I'm going to be fine with it.
100%. If he's a piece to the puzzle, that's awesome, but you can't bank completely on what ifs, especially at a position where you got to replace so much production. So, I'm all for it. Bring him in. I see this from Ryan. I appreciate it. He says, what wide receiver do you want to see us get? Omega Blake. Yes. Andrew mentioned him. Would love that. Sounds like they feel like they're in a really good position there. I know he's wrapping up his visit. And then would you consider Jordan Dwyer a number one? That's the kid out of Idaho, the FCS, who just put up freaking video game numbers. Why not both? I mean, I'm serious, because I thought you made a good point earlier today, Andrew, about like, they're not just going to do a 1-for-1 replacement of Andrew Armstrong. What you're probably going to need is several guys, and you might need to get substantially better at your number 2 and number 3 wide receiver position to kind of bridge that gap a little bit. Why not both? Yeah. I mean, I don't know how much this kid from Idaho is going to cost you, or this kid from Charlotte is going to cost you. I'm sure they're semi-coveted, but I don't think you're going to have to break the bank for those guys. So, I mean,
I kind of view it the same way, where I'm like, look, I'm cool with bringing in Crutchfield as long as you're also bringing in a guy like an Omega Blake who has some proven production, albeit at a lower level. Like you're taking a little bit of a swing here and then getting someone who's actually played and produced. Same kind of thing. If you're getting a guy like Kendrick Law, who, we all like the idea of Kendrick Law, but it hasn't really shown up here at the SEC level. You go out and get a guy in Jordan Dwyer who, at Idaho at the FCS level, put up crazy numbers. Like, I kind of like the balance of that, where it's like, you can't have all guys who are hypothetical former high recruits that haven't played yet and maybe they'll be good. I think you need some of those, like you mentioned earlier, like guys that have proven it at lower levels as well. Like, those are just typically in the portal. That's what you're getting, is bounce backs at high programs and proven players at small programs. I think Arkansas has room for all of that. And again, it was like we've said a few times now, you just can't be picky at wide receiver. I feel like Arkansas needs to they need to take as many swings as they can, and eventually you're going to let the cream rise to the top, and you'll have some of these guys turn out to be legitimate difference makers. What I really like, and I see Brian McDaniel just made this point as I'm saying it, he said Blake is 6'2" and Dwyer is 6 foot. That's really why I think they need those guys. I mean, Omega Blake, big play guy, bring some speed to the wide receiver room, which I feel like Arkansas desperately needs. I like Shanks, but I don't know if he's going to be making plays downfield on offense. Omega Blake would bring that, and the Dwyer kid, he has some nice size to him as well. Like, and Crutchfield, by the way, is 6 feet tall. He would be one of their bigger wide receivers as well. Like, I think Arkansas could use some of that. Just get as many skill sets as you can. Just get a nice little pot of gumbo, mix it all together, all the skill sets, and then eventually you'll find 3 or 4 playable wide receivers out of that.
Love me some gumbo, man. I tell you what.
Yeah, it would be nice right now too.
Sorry. I was gonna say, I just want to run this by you guys real quick, because obviously we know that they got a lot of holes they got to fill, right? And a lot of them on the secondary, for example. And I saw that they've got the kid from like Eastern Michigan, I think it was, is visiting starting today. Anyway, had really good PFF grades. I don't know that much about him. We've been on the show. I haven't been able to look him up. The corner from Cincinnati, Young, has already been in. Like, there's some guys that they're, they feel like they're in a good position in that I think could help them. You guys saw the JUCO news, right? The ruling that's coming down about, basically those guys getting their eligibility back, and I don't know, like JUCO football just not counting or whatever the hell is going on there. That would give, I ain't promoting it, I just want to see how you feel about it. One of the guys who would be impacted by that is Marquise Robinson.
Yep.
It would give him an extra year.
I know everybody hates Flappy Bird. That's a corner who's played at the smaller level and then came and played in the SEC. The thing that I guess would concern me, and I'm sure a lot of others, is he pretty much got benched at Arkansas down the stretch. I mean, he pretty much lost his job. But I think Arkansas, again, you're not really in a position to be picky on the defensive backs. Like, I think Arkansas needs as much help in the secondary as they can get. So yeah, I would gladly, believe it or not, welcome back Cuddy with open arms. Like his personality, maybe having him around, maybe he turns the corner this offseason. I really don't know, but I think Arkansas is in desperate need of stability in the secondary. Not that Marquise Robinson brings that by himself, but I certainly would not have an issue with him being back at Arkansas.
No, I'd take him in a heartbeat. My
thought process is, if you add, say you get this dude from Cincinnati, and then you've got him and Marquise Robinson, like, two deep on one side, and then you've got the JUCO kid and the dude from Oklahoma on the other side, and like at that point, that's probably comparable to what you had. And maybe you make your upgrades elsewhere. I don't know. But I like this kid from Eastern Michigan. He's a safety. And like we've been looking at like, who the hell are these, safeties that they're bringing in? They got to get a couple starters back there, it feels like. And, the Adrian Maddox kid from UAB is come and gone. I don't know, what the situation there is with him. I know he's got like 4 or 5 more visits in a row coming up or something. But yeah, I mean, this kid from Eastern Michigan, 6'3", 200. So he's got the size, 55 tackles on the year. I think he's damn near an 80 graded out on some areas in PFF. So,
Hey, listen, I'll just take him for his name alone. Quintavious Scandrett. I mean, come on.
It's a good name.
You don't want a player named Quintavious Scandrett? I mean, he's got to be good with a name like that. I know. I want to bring up this point real quick though, too, because going back to the whole thing of, accepting a guy like Crutchfield back. William brings it up. He says that's why it's important when you lose a guy in recruiting to maintain a good relationship with him. You might be able to bring him in later, and I completely agree with that. And then just one final point I'll also make on that, folks, is for those of you who may be upset or saying, we don't want him, whatever it is. Here's my thing. Not wanting him because he said no to you or whatever. If you were fine with someone like Selman Bridges coming back after entering into the portal, because technically he told you no. He went into the portal and then he came back. If you were accepting of him coming back out of the portal, you should be accepting to somebody like Crutchfield coming to play here too. You can't have it both ways. So just get the best players that you got and try to make it work. Let's just focus on that. Focus on getting the best players possible.
Well, and like the McCroy kid too. He was the exact same situation as Crutchfield. Like, chose another school over Arkansas, and then a year later he's back at Arkansas. Like, I don't know how you can welcome him with open arms, but be like, no, Crutchfield.
Yeah, just can't do it that way. Just can't.
Jalen Catalan's available.
Is he still
eligibility left?
I guess.
Good God.
I mean, he probably took like 3 med shirts though. So
Dude, eligibility is a myth. It really is. If Hudson Clark and Jalen Catalon play college football in 2025, then we've just officially like declared that like you can play football as long as you want. Jalen Catalon literally was Chad Morris's first recruiting class at Arkansas.
Dude, I want that now. I don't care. Bring Catalon in. Let's get HUD on it. Let's get the no-fly zone back. Let's run it back like it's 2020, baby. Let's just do it.
96 tackles and 5 interceptions this year.
That is,
he's an All-American. It's crazy.
That's hilarious, man. But I'm for real. If they had a chance and if they could bring Jalen Catalon back, 100% bring him back. 1,000% bring him back.
Oh, it would fire me up, man.
Yeah, I'd be pumped by that. Like, I always really liked Jalen Catalon for many reasons. He was a really good player, but he's obviously somebody that could help you, and he's somebody that he just had that hard-hitting safety mentality that I felt like Arkansas hadn't had in so long. And he was a ball hawk guy. I don't know. I would just love
but if he made his first tackle and grabbed that shoulder, I'd crash out.
No,
Curtis, do you remember way back in the day, whenever Jalen Catalon announced he was returning? I guess it was for the 2022 season, because he had like gotten hurt or whatever in 2021, but he announced he was coming back, and he like recorded this video instead of doing the written statement like everyone does. He recorded a video, and so I was like typing up his returning story, and you were transcribing the video, and like we had, because like everybody else just posts their statement or whatever. You can copy and paste. He did a video, and so Curtis sat there and listened to his video and transcribed it, and then sent me the quote so I could put it in my story. That was back in the day. That was back in a different era, whenever newspapers were delivered to people's front doors.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. Was it Catalon who was being a little too aggressive in the scrimmage and hit, I can't remember who it was, out of bounds on the sidelines, and then he wound up cleating Hunter Yurachek in the face?
Yes, it was that running back. What was that running back's name?
Yes,
the kid ended up on Abilene Christian.
He was like the track star, wasn't he?
Oglesby.
That's right.
Cleated Yurachek in the face. Yeah, that was Catalon that did that.
And then the best thing about that was Yurachek tweeting out the picture of him being cleated in the face and making a Bobby Petrino joke. Yeah, that was phenomenal. And full circle, here we are.
That was we give Hunter Yurachek a lot of shit on the show. That was a badass moment. Whenever he took the cleat taking the cleat to the face, I would have been crying and on the floor for days. Him kind of owning that was cool. And then him, like, he is good about that, like kind of knowing when people are talking about things and making jokes. Yeah, good stuff. That was back when Hunter Yurachek, he was like at the peak of his powers back then.
That's right.
Yeah. And also, since we're talking about Catalon entering the portal, we're talking about bringing him home. Like, I put out a tweet, and yes, folks, I know he's probably going to Purdue and following Barry Odom. Like, I'm not. That's obviously the one that he's probably going to do, but it's still fun to just let me dream. Okay. Just let me have my moment. Just let me dream about it.
Barry's just coaching all of our assistant position coaches too. He's a savage, man.
He's pissed that they didn't get the job like he should have. Just saying. I did want to bring this up because I was actually looking to upload this picture, but I guess one of y'all did. But this was from Raylan Sharp, just a phenomenal tweet. Just good stuff. The AI has gotten out of control on Twitter with the people in pictures and stuff. But when you got Raylan Sharp putting out this one, Raylan Sharp's going for 800 yards this year. That's all I'm going to say.
Did y'all like Raylan Sharp posting the screenshot of his text with Bobby from a year ago?
He did.
A year ago, he had texted Bobby and was like, I want to be a part of what y'all got going on at Arkansas, which we alluded to that he wanted. I love that. And I really do like Raylan Sharp's been on campus for like 3 days now. Love that. I mean, he clearly does #embrace the hog.
I don't know how good he's going to be, like how big of an impact he's going to make for Arkansas, but I love this kid already. Mm-hmm. He's climbing up the favorites list real quick.
Well, he just, and I also saw like he put up a picture, and I can't believe I missed this one, but he put up a picture of, I guess, some photo edit of him in wearing a Razorback uniform. And then the caption just said, "I'm not about to go Hollywood. The whole neighborhood got to witness this." I don't know what that means, but it sounds great.
Love it.
And yeah, I'm hoping that he's as excited, which I think he's excited, no doubt, but that he's going to be as good as advertised.
You know who else has been great on Twitter today? Taylon Green.
Yes, he has.
The happiest man in Arkansas. Just he's giddy, and I don't blame him because he was in a tough situation. Get that man some help. Support him. Keep him on his feet. He's been good on Twitter today.
Yeah, listen, like we talked a little bit about yesterday. I even talked about it on Locked On, but I'm like, man, I just couldn't imagine being in a situation where he's having to kind of have a whole new team come in under the same system, under the same team. But yeah, when he posted that video, there was a few things. I was like, why are you posting it sideways?
Sideways is tough. The guy's doing this motion.
Yeah.
But it's like sideways. So he's like,
yeah. And then like the video is like full screen, but the actual video itself is like this big. And then there's black around. I'm like, is this, I mean, at first I was like, is this a meme that I just didn't know about? Like it's supposed to be that way. I didn't know, but
Talon is running his own Twitter. That like he didn't have someone do that for him. He's just doing it and he like kind of screen recorded it, a little half-assed effort. I like that.
Yeah. Hey, Talon, if you need help, my man, I got CapCut. I can help you out with some videos, man. If you ever need someone like that. So anyways, but yes, that's been good. Again, good positive vibes. Good positive vibes is good to see from Razorback fans, Razorback players, and still got a lot of work to do though. I think we've all agree, even fans agree, still got a lot of work to do, but this was the type of pop and momentum that you were hoping to get and hoping to maintain and hoping to continue to build here too. So it's been really good. Let's see a few more of the chats, which are also, by the way, folks, got an interview with Brandon Marcello. I meant to mention this, put it on Twitter, but Brandon Marcello of CBS Sports 24/7 Sports got an interview with him that won't play back. He's had some interesting things to say about the current transfer portal craziness and madness, especially dealing with Arkansas. So we'll be playing that interview later in the show, that just to give you all a heads up. So I did want to bring up, I was trying to remember where to find the chat and where it's at. Oh yeah, this come on back to the whole thing of the thoughts about the ruling and the JUCO players maintaining 4 years of eligibility. First off, shout out to old Diego for making this happen and making this possible. But it truly is fascinating to think about what the JUCO route will become, where it essentially could be a farm system. You know, it always has been a little bit, but a farm system for players to where it's like, hey, you can play 2 years in JUCO, get developed, get all ready and stuff. And then when you come to college, hey, you can play 4 years if you'd like. I mean, I don't know how often that'll happen, but it at least is something to where if you really like a player and you're like, yeah, you're just not there yet, go to this school over here and develop. And then, you know, we'll have a spot for you and then we'll play you as long as you can or as long as you want, and you'll be ready for it. I just think that this is, I'm just curious of how much of an impact this is going to have, not just on college football, but college sports in general, because for the most part, JUCOs are not as utilized as they once were, but still pretty utilized, especially in college baseball too. Like that's a huge factor of how this could all play out in college sports with junior colleges.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. I don't know how much of an impact it'll make in football. Because could you imagine somebody playing 6 years of college football? I mean, that's crazy.
I can imagine it because I'm seeing it happen a lot. Jalen Catalon.
Well, because you've had injuries and everything else, and then the COVID year and all that shit's over with. And so it's like, all right, we're going to get rid of the guys who are Andrew's age playing college football. And now we're just empowering that, it seems like, which is crazy. But yeah, the impact it'll have in other sports, I think is really interesting. Baseball, that is very interesting. I hadn't thought about that side of it.
Well, so I don't think it's going to have a massive impact in terms of this year Arkansas's football roster, because there's only a handful of players who have even played JUCO, and I don't know if it's retroactive or not. I don't know if it's going to like immediately be a thing that changes the game. But you mentioned baseball. Why is JUCO still actively used in college baseball? Because kids have an incentive to go to JUCO, because you can be your draft eligible after 1 year, 2 years. So there's a lot of really talented players who choose to go to JUCO. Hell, Arkansas's got a couple of them on their roster this year. I mean, they've had a ton of them. But that's what has kind of set baseball apart from football and basketball. Because if you're in football or basketball, there really is no incentive to go to JUCO other than your grades are bad, or maybe you just didn't have the offers you wanted. In baseball, you've seen like talented kids go to JUCO rather than going to a mid-major or to a high major baseball team. Now I think you have kids. So like, for instance, this Jaquan McCroy kid, wouldn't it have been nice if instead of you going and sitting for a year, sitting for 2 years, go to Hutchinson, start at right tackle, get a bunch of reps, get your body in order. If we'll do what you got to do, we'll bring you in and you can start right away. It'll be a lot easier for that, or, quarterbacks or whoever, because we agree that O-line and D-line, it's hard to step right into the SEC and play. So I think a lot of those kids, I think you'll probably be cutting deals, because I know Arkansas baseball does that all the time. I mean, Matt Goodhart, they pretty much told him, go play at JUCO and then we'll bring you in next year. I think you'll see a lot more of that happen. Whereas like right now, I just don't know how many times Sam Pittman or Calipari for sure are looking at a kid and being like, hey, go play JUCO and we'll bring you in next year. I don't think that happens at football as much anymore. In baseball, it's still been happening because, again, kids are okay to go to JUCO because you can get drafted out of there. I think this will now give kids a real incentive to want to go JUCO. And so you might see talented, actual, maybe not like 5-star, 4-star kids, but like high 3-star kids that maybe aren't quite ready to compete in the SEC. We'll say, hey, yeah, I don't mind spending a year at JUCO, especially if I'm gonna still get 4 years of eligibility. I think this will have a little bit of an impact for real.
I like this from Jeff. He says you'll see university systems start football at the JUCO level. U of A Rich Mountain. Why not? Hell, make it a real feeder system to where people can't get poached. And you got your guys, they're going to play at that school. But you're 100% right. Like they'll have deals with players, and they'll have deals with other coaching staffs of, hey, we're going to send this guy over there. We want him to play. We want this and that. And you scratch our back, we'll scratch yours type of situation. It's going to be very interesting. I like it though. Why not?
Yeah, I do too. Well, I mean, hey, just make UAPB's right there already. They're the system school. Just make it happen for them. In fact,
to JUCO.
Yeah, just make them into the JUCO route. Yeah, because we'll use this as part of our SEC update presented by Rhoback, folks. If you want one of these sweet Rhoback shirts in time for Christmas, they got everything, by the way, performance gear. Check it out at Rhoback.com. Use promo code HOGSBY20 for 20% off your first purchase. Doesn't matter how much you order on all the Razorback gear you could possibly want, but just head over there to Rhoback.com. Use promo code HOGSBY20 for 20% off your first purchase. We're talking about the JUCO route and how that can change some things and everything. I'm curious, but what it also does for me, guys, is seeing what happened with Diego is really just continues to confirm what we all know. The NCAA they can't enforce anything. They have zero power, and it's just hysterical to me to where it's like, hey, you can't play anymore. Well, no, I think I should. Well, you can't. Well, why not? Because it's in the rules. Okay, I'll see you in the court. All right, go to court. Yeah, I'll win. All right, well, I guess you got to play. Like they have no power, and it continues to show that. So I'm happy for Diego just because it's kind of cool to have him back for another year and being able to play. But these are the types of things that just really continue to show that, hey, you think you got it together, you think you got everything going on for you, and you don't. So it's just really funny for that. Also, did you guys see Greg Byrne, the athletic director for Alabama, just getting roasted on social media yesterday? It's pretty great stuff. Yeah, I mean, it was. For those of you who may not know, sometimes you got to read the room, my man. Greg Byrne, the athletic director for Alabama, just goes out on Twitter. He puts his long statement out. It was basically like from the office of Hunter Yurchek type of email, but he just put it out on Twitter. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but essentially what it was doing is him begging fans for more money towards their collective and trying to make their program better, their competitive nature better, and everything. And everyone's like, dude, you're Alabama. Like you're Alabama football. And you're telling me that with all the money that you got and all the setups that you have and everything, you still need more? So it was quite hilarious to see just the roasting that Greg Byrne got, which, like you said, Curtis, he deserved it. But man, I don't know if that's the route you wanted to go at this juncture, at this point in time, on people saying, hey, well, we desperately need your money, so please give us even more money.
Yeah, man. I just that was wild. I had to go to his actual Twitter profile to make sure it was actually him. Like I was like, this has got to be a troll. There's no way this dude's doing this. He was, and that's interesting, man, to kind of indict your program like that. Oh, that was a choice.
Mm-hmm. I'm just gonna say this. I'm not gonna be too dramatic and be like, Bama football's done. They're screwed. Bama football is very clearly no longer the standard by which we all compare ourselves to. Like clearly they've been replaced by Georgia as the top program in the SEC, top program in the country, probably. They've lost a little bit of their like mystique and allure. This adds to that. When you have your AD kind of out here just begging for money, that ruins that mystique and allure a little bit. I also I think call me crazy, I think DeBoer is entering a very pivotal offseason and season. If Bama goes 7-5 next year, real life, and by the way, if you look at their roster and you look at some of the other SEC rosters, very much in play. Like I'm not 100% sure Bama's going to be better than Auburn next year. I'll just go ahead and say that. I think if you look around, like I think Bama going 7-5 may sound crazy and blasphemous to some people. If you really look at the rosters in the SEC and look at what Bama has, and I mean, they haven't done much in the portal so far, and they've had a lot of guys leave, a lot of depth pieces, but their depth took a hit because all of their second and third string guys were Saban guys that are now leaving, like the Kendrick Laws, the Kobe Prentices. I think Bama, if they go 7-5 in 2025, DeBoer's going to enter that third season with the hottest seat in the world, which is just kind of crazy. It's going to be fascinating to see. There's a chance here for some of these other programs to kind of pass up Bama to get their lick back, kind of like we were saying. It's going to be interesting, man. I'm not trying to be dramatic. I know Bama's still an elite program. Like they're like one decent week in the portal away from being a top 5 preseason team. But I think they're a little bit vulnerable now. And I'll be very interested to see if DeBoer is able to right this ship and really keep Bama rolling and get them back in the playoff next year. Because there's a little crack in the armor a little bit.
Dude, if he goes 7-5, he might not get a year 3.
I mean, very, very, very real.
Yeah.
That's like what they always say. Once you create a monster, you got to be able to feed it. And they had a monster for 20 years, and so they don't know what to do with their hands. They're like, wait a minute. Not only are we not in the playoff for not winning a championship, but then we're getting beat out in NIL and recruits. These recruits that we're wanting, we're getting beat out. What do we do? Well, this is a Hail Mary for them. This is a desperation move where we hit the nuke button. We just don't know what to do. Hey, give us money because that's going to fix everything. It's like, well, maybe just welcome to a reality and welcome to what it's like being immortal, from a actual football standpoint instead of just being, because you got spoiled, you got used to it. We're never going to see an Alabama run ever again in college football, especially like ever. I mean, in fact, we never saw anything like that prior, even back when the rules were a little bit easier to do something like that. So yeah, getting roasted like that made me very happy. And just kind of like, yeah, welcome to what it's really like for most of us here in college football, instead of you just being that way.
By the way, kind of shed some light on why Saban left. One, obviously he doesn't like the new era and all that. I think him leaving was kind of a sign of, hey, maybe Bama is not as equipped to thrive in this new society as we maybe thought. And hell, we've now I'm sure it's moved a little bit. I haven't checked this morning. As of yesterday, Arkansas on 3's transfer portal thing that takes into account incoming and outgoing. Arkansas was 67th among 70 Power 4 teams, and they were like the second worst in the SEC. You know who the worst in the SEC was? Freaking Alabama. They haven't done anything in the portal. Like they have not done it. They have not done a damn thing. And now they have more returning talent, and they had a really good recruiting class. Not saying it's the same situation. But yeah, Bama, you could make an argument as having as bad of an offseason as Arkansas.
And it's also funny too, seeing some Bama fans like, at least a lot of them are just, hey, we're going to protest the Rhoback West Bowl. We're not going to it. I'm like, okay, keep doing that. Keep having that energy, because you just expect it because you're Alabama. And DeBoer, here's what's going to happen is DeBoer, he may be even if he goes like 8-4, there could be some craziness where he gets fired and he'll go somewhere else and still be a great coach and have success. Because again, it's like, you're not Nick Saban. Well, nobody is. I just don't see them just stepping in and being fine after that. I just don't see it in any case. So
future Arkansas head coach, Kalen DeBoer.
I mean, I don't think Razorback fans would be against that. If that ended up happening.
Nor should they. But I'm just saying, like, I think the door is open.
Yes, it could absolutely happen. Few more chats on this. I like this from Hayden. He said the thumbnail caption on this one was unhinged.
That's nasty word, John.
I know.
I didn't see it. What was it?
Yeah, just the Hogs get the heavies is all I said. So, I mean, what do you want me to say? They got heavy guys coming in. I mean, come on. It's just, that's what they're called, right? Unbiased says, happy Hunter for this Hog football team. Hope they keep cooking. I'm about to watch some preliminary stuff before Tyson Fury gets knocked out on Saturday.
I pulled that up for the last part of that. Yeah, I think I'm with you, Unbiased Brim. The Tyson Fury thing was fun while it lasted. But yeah, Usyk's going to finish the job.
Dude, so. Usyk's a legend. John, do you even know Usyk? Like, do you even know that name?
No, I
don't. He's the best heavyweight boxer on the planet. And one of the best, but he just
he's not even heavy.
Yeah, he's not. He's like a 225-pound heavyweight. It's crazy. But he beat Tyson Fury in his last fight, and they're doing the rematch this weekend, and like nobody knows it's happening except for Unbiased Brim, who he's tapped in on everything though.
Oh, okay. Well, now I know, and I learned something from it too. So
it's a shame. It's a shame that I kind of forgot about it, but that John doesn't even know, and not John in particular, but just that normal people don't know that the two best heavyweights in the world are fighting Saturday.
Yeah, and you got to work on that marketing stuff, is what they got to do. Also, Jeremiah asked this question. He's like, anyone else find it strange that the amount of Hogs in the portal not having traction to go anywhere?
Who are you referencing exactly? Because I mean, I feel like there's been a lot of them that have, Dallas Young is, I guess, maybe, or like.
Well,
Who is this referencing?
I guess maybe like, is it the Braylon Russells of the world saying like, oh, you haven't heard anything from
Yeah, he just got in like the other day. I mean,
he's at Kansas State.
Satania, I think, is going to end up. I heard Satania to OU might happen, but it has been a little bit quiet with him. But I mean, most of Arkansas's guys that have entered the portal have landed somewhere else.
Yeah, I think it was a little interesting that it was Satania that had like because he was the first one to enter into the portal. I felt like, or at least really early, and he's the least amount that you've heard as far as taking visits or going places. So yeah, I think from that perspective, maybe I understand what you're saying, but yeah, a lot of them have already committed and gone elsewhere. At least the big ones.
Russell and Dominion have been in there for 48 hours. You know, like I mean, they haven't even had time to get the paperwork done. Satania is the one that I could see the case, but I think he's going to end up at OU or A&M, right?
I mean, I would be surprised if he didn't at least one of those schools. I would be shocked.
We haven't had a chance to talk about it, but shout out to Addison Nichols for going to a playoff team.
Yeah, SMU. How about that? How about that? I think it's pretty cool. Like for him, I'm not trying to say anything because I know Razorback fans don't care, but I think it's pretty cool to say that he's going to a big time ACC school.
So he'll probably do well there. Nico to UCLA. I don't think we brought that one up either, but
good for Nico and Jaden Wilson going to turn UCLA around. Nico was the prospect to be named later in the Madden Iamaleava trade.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what a change that would be, going from Fayetteville, Arkansas to Los Angeles and hanging out at UCLA and playing in the Big Ten. So hey, kudos to him. Kudos to him for it. Also, as part of your SEC update, we've been talking a lot of football, but did want to bring up the basketball side of things because once again, last night you had some SEC games going on. Alabama struggled a little bit with North Dakota in that one. 97-90 was that one. So
they can't guard anybody,
dude.
Alabama.
I watched a little bit. North Dakota's 4-9, so it's not like they're a great team. But man, just like what had the guy? I'm trying to remember his name now. For them that had 40 last night for North Dakota. Eagle Staff was like, I mean, that's not the most North Dakota Native American name ever. Eagle Staff. He goes for 40, but yeah, I was really hoping Bama would lose, but still didn't happen.
You know what's weird? The North Dakota and South Dakota, the states are good. Typically, North Dakota and South Dakota aren't good. But like North Dakota State, they're usually obviously very good at football. South Dakota State basketball is usually pretty much a wagon. You don't hear much about just the Dakotas, but it's nice to see North Dakota making some waves.
Yeah. Well, if they can't guard Eagle Staff, Curtis, I can't hate on this one too much but it is still a weird number. He's number 52. It's still under the old light of like it's fine because you do that, but still 52 I ain't a fan of.
52, that's a middle linebacker number right there, brother. You shouldn't be wearing 52 if you're dropping 40 on Alabama basketball.
Yeah, shouldn't happen. But still, it was that if you can't guard him, and if you're Alabama and he's doing that to you, you may have some problems there. But they did get the win, and has also been brought up, and people were giving you, I know, a hard time about it, Curtis, but Oklahoma did beat Michigan last night, 87-86, in what was the dumbest way of winning it, with fouling on a 3-point shot and then getting the 4-point play. Brutal there for the Michigan Wolverines. But
yeah, that win for Arkansas is not going to age well. Michigan sucks, dude. There are times where they look fantastic, but that's the most poorly coached team I've seen this season. They do stupid ass thing after stupid ass thing. And I am now in the camp with Andrew Ellis that Dusty May does not know what he's doing. They're just doing the dumbest shit that entire game. Like they're up by 10 and just should have just ran away with it. And now we're just going to continue with this myth that Oklahoma is really a top 10 team. And it's just going to be that way until they get in SEC play and go below 500, which is going to happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, Michigan just handing the ball to it. Just hand them the ball. The hell were they doing? It was ridiculous.
So do we think Oklahoma might just be this year's South Carolina though?
No. Where
they just fail upwards somehow? And I agree. I think if we replayed last season, I don't think South Carolina would do what they did last year again. Mm-hmm. But I'm worried that Oklahoma is just going to keep farting around and winning these games. Not that I really care that much. I mean, Porter Moser, don't have any ill will against the guy. Porter Moser, I will say this about him. Looks like an asshole. Like you see him on TV and he looks like an angry guy who would be just like this hard ass. But then like the 2 times I've been around him and heard him talk, very gentle and docile human being.
Yes. Yes, I got the vibe too. And the way that he looks like one of those guys that just works out way too much. Maybe he's on the roids. I don't know. But you just did not ever take him for a basketball coach. But he's got a team that's 11-0 right now. And, you got to at least give him that. So that was a big win.
He does it every year.
Mm-hmm.
They roll through non-conference every year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What was it? They were preseason picked last in the SEC. And then SEC Media Days, he got asked like 2 questions in the big room. So, yeah, at least proving those people wrong. And also another big win for the SEC last night. Vanderbilt beat the Citadel 105-53.
Yep, and they moved up 15 spots in the net and passed Arkansas because of it.
They beat a 5-5 Citadel team by 52 points.
Mm-hmm.
And that gives, you gotta boost them up. You got to get them over there. That's dumb.
And the people who are jumping down my throat for just pointing out that this is not helping Arkansas to not when they're playing with their food and winning these games by 12-15, they should be winning by 40. It does make a difference. Mm-hmm. It absolutely does. And that's why you're barely inside the top 50 of the net right now. And Vanderbilt can just beat a really bad team by a lot and pass you like it's no big deal.
I really do. I cannot wait for SEC games to start and for some of this stuff to start to stabilize a little bit, because we're still in that time of year where one game holds so much weight. Like if Arkansas wins by 5 on Saturday, like it's going to move the needle a good bit. Once you get into SEC, there starts the sample size starts to grow a little bit. It'll be nice for some of these teams like in Oklahoma or whoever to get exposed, but also for just the cream to rise to the top. And I do think Arkansas is going to be in the midst of that cream.
Well, tonight you got a couple more SEC games on Thursday night action. You got Buffalo taking on Georgia, the former Nate Oates team going to be taking on the Bulldogs. And you also got New Orleans, not the Pelicans, but the team called the New Orleans whatevers. They're going to be taking on Texas tonight in the Moody Center. So there you go. Mm-hmm. That's your SEC slate for tonight.
Georgia will win by 45 and Texas will screw around and win by about 14.
That's what I like to hear. I love that. Also, Thursday night basketball is weird to me. I mean, I'm never going to be against it, but it is just strange to have some SEC basketball there on a Thursday night, but they'll be having it here tonight too.
You remember they used to have that all the time. It'd be like Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays were when they would do that. There would be times Eric Musselman would have not liked being in that SEC where you play Thursday, Saturday, and then maybe on Tuesday too. Like they would have stuff like that going on. I kind of miss it.
Yeah, I remember there was a time where there was Thursday night, Saturday SEC games, and then because the women usually play Thursday night, Sundays, I think is what they do. So. Those were, and back when the SEC had divisions, remember how stupid that was? It's like, oh man, those were the good times. Those were the good times. Also, for back to the college football landscape too, there are bowl games going on. That was a great game yesterday with the UNLV team. Everyone was talking about that great fake punt, the shovel pass thing. I was like, hey, I'd seen that before in that Chad Morris game against Auburn. They didn't convert it. But still, UNLV beats Cal 24-13 in the Art of Sport LA Bowl. And then James Madison beats the Hilltoppers of Western Kentucky in the Boca Raton Bowl going 27-17. I did find it funny that Western Kentucky went 8-6 this year. It's just such a funny record, 8-6 in college football. But that's what they did. But no bowl games tonight. Kind of sad that there's not going to be. But tomorrow night, though, is the first SEC bowl game where you have Florida taking on Tulane in the Union Home Mortgage Gasparilla Bowl. And then, of course, there's the thing like the college football playoffs that start tomorrow with Indiana and Notre Dame. So, yeah, get to look forward to that and having some fun with that. All right. So we'll get to Brandon Marcel here in a bit. A few other chats, though, that we want to get to before we get into the next thing. If I can find where I started. Because there's always a lot of chats, which we appreciate, folks, by the way, everybody watching in and checking in and having some fun with that too. Oh yeah. Joey says, so much news. I forgot where I read it, but no raise, no extensions. Is money tight? Saving for new buyouts to the new hire staff, all the money pushed to NIL. Any insight?
We're talking about the Arkansas coaching staff? Yeah,
I believe so.
I mean, the one guy I guess we would have thought would get maybe a bump would be T. Will, just to like make sure he doesn't take any other job. But I don't know. I mean, if you don't want to keep the players from the 6-6 team, do you want to double the pay of all the coaches on a 6-6 team?
I wouldn't think, but I mean, I don't know.
Money is tight.
Yeah, money is very much tight. Yeah, to answer that question, yes, money is tight.
Yeah. Well, I was
It all
also
went to Corey Robinson.
Yeah. Well, I was also wondering too, like if how many teams out there are actually doing and having extensions and raises and whatnot. Like maybe a few, but I haven't seen a whole lot of news of, hey, a head coach gets a new contract, new extension. I think money's tight on everybody.
Yeah.
So
Like they're having to move things around to be able to accommodate that revenue sharing that's coming up. And it's like, like pushing back some capital projects they want to do and different renovations and stuff like that. I mean, they got to find ways to make that money work. So I guess I hadn't seen that, but I'm not necessarily surprised by it, I guess.
Yeah. I'm not surprised by it either, but still they'll be, I think everybody's going to be fine financially. I think people are just being overly cautious of how their spending is going to be here in the near future with all of that.
I want to touch on two funny things here. One, Ace says T-Will making less than most of the players. Before I respond to his comment, shout out to Hayden Short, who was like, Ace, remember me from school, bro? Hope you're doing well. That's just hilarious. I love that. Hopefully those guys get together. Two of our favorite chatters, I would say. But no, I thought about this though, that there are multiple players on these rosters who are making more than a lot of position coaches. T-Will's making a good bit, so it's very rare you're gonna have a player making more than him. But like, if you're say Arkansas paid a receiver $600,000 to come in, how's Ronnie Fouch supposed to tell him anything? It's like, hey, Ronnie, I'll give you $20 to shut the hell up. Like it's like, right. What do you do? It's like, how do you tell that guy? I know that's a thing at the pro levels where the head coach is making less than most of his roster, but it's like that's a new dynamic in college football.
It's like position coaches. Sometimes they'll like invite their guys over, like have them over for dinner or whatever. I'd be like, it's on y'all. What do you mean?
Imagine taking your protege out to lunch and he's like, hey, I got the tab. Don't worry, buddy. Like I'll pick this one up. I also think about Bumper Pool and Michael Shear, who have a very fascinating relationship. Imagine if that was today, Bumper Pool would 100% be making more to play at Arkansas than Shear would be to get to coach at the linebackers. That'd be fascinating. It's like, hey, you can marry my sister, but I'm paying for your dinner.
Yeah, I don't know how that dynamic would work, but whatever it is, I guess they're making it work. They're doing whatever they can for it. So, all right. So, folks, again, we appreciate everybody listening in. You're going to replay this interview that we had with Brandon Marcel of 24/7 Sports and CBS Sports, talking about the latest in transfer portal, Arkansas situation. Can they get better from it? Can they get out of it? And is this all sustainable? So let's go ahead and hear from the guy himself, the man himself, Brandon Marcello.
Turn that damn
Well, Razorback fans, we know that right now it's pretty chaotic with the transfer portal going on for not only the Razorbacks, but for all of SEC, all of college football in general. It's almost hard to keep up with, but one guy that keeps up with it all when it comes to all things college football is Brandon Marcello, and he joins us right now here on the show. It's Brandon Marcello of CBS Sports and 24/7 Sports, national college football writer. And Brandon, as always, man, appreciate you joining us. How you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing okay. I'm not in the portal.
That's good. Give it time, though. That could change at any given time, it seems like, because it's all over the place. And we'll just start with that in general before we get into specifics with Arkansas. This transfer portal thing, everyone wants different things done with it and changing and all of that. But, man, just what are your thoughts on where it stands right now? The current state of the transfer portal in college football, what are your thoughts?
They need to corral it somehow, some way. And my belief is they're not going to be able to until there's actual federal legislation that will end up signifying and labeling college athletes as a special class of an employer-employee relationship without actually calling the players employees. And the NCAA is actively working on that. There's some hope there, more hope now, that they'll be able to get something done within the next year or two. Now that there is, the political party shifting there, more Republican, there's some belief there with Ted Cruz heading up one of those big committees related to all this, that he'll kind of take this to the forefront here in the next few months, and who knows. But until then, I just don't see how college sports or college football in particular can bring this all in. You can't put the genie back in the bottle, so to speak, without some federal legislation. And even so, what that's going to entail is that there needs to be some type of collective bargaining with players, which will then allow the players a seat at the table and to discuss what works best for them and also what works best for the schools when it comes to windows for the transfer portal, limitations in the transfer portal, and all of that. Individual schools have tried to curb transfers at this time of year in December by putting like clauses in the contracts, the NIL contracts, that say they can't say, I think technically legally, you have to stay through the bowl game, but some of them just smartly put in there like you have to stay here through this date. Otherwise, you're not going to get your last check or two. And so that's why you're seeing a lot of programs, not a lot of programs, but several programs able to keep their rosters intact. I think the perfect one that kind of encapsulates that is Colorado. Travis Hunter just won the Heisman Trophy, is going to be a top 10 pick in the draft, and he's still going to play in their bowl game. And so is Shedeur Sanders, all their big stars at Colorado, and they're not in the playoffs. So this is something that individual schools, you can manage to keep most of your roster there on campus in the December month by, one, the culture you build, and secondly, with smart written NIL contracts that will keep them on campus.
Well, one of the teams that, of course, we know is Arkansas, who have basically lost everybody. It seems like out of the transfer portal, 28, as where it stands now, could change at any moment. But 28 players have jumped into the portal from Arkansas, a lot of them being big-time contributors. You're talking about offensive linemen. You're talking about secondary players. You're talking about running backs. It just seems like a lot of teams deal with this, but Arkansas, at least in the SEC, has maybe dealt with it the worst when it comes to guys jumping into the portal. What do you make of that? Is it simply money? Is there more to it? Just what kind of do you feel like is going on at Arkansas and why they've had so many departures compared to previous years?
I think it's all complicated, but it's just not a good thing when you see Arkansas like leading the SEC as far as departures, especially when it's a coach who's been there a while. This isn't like a new coaching staff coming in, and so they need different types of players to fit systems and all that. And also Arkansas, for the first time in a while, in several years, they've got the same staff coming back, especially at coordinator spots. They're not having to change things on the fly there, so the players know what to expect. So maybe some of these decisions are philosophy, like I don't fit in the system here, or, it's probably a lot of it has to do with money. And the reason why I say that is because practically every move in the transfer portal when it comes to guys on the two deep is not necessarily playing time. It comes down to the money, because they're going to go somewhere where they're going to get the same amount of playing time, just about, and the decision-making process there for them is usually steered by money. A lot of folks, some folks, they'll join the portal to see if that will kind of put the feet to the fire for some programs, including the one that they are currently at, to pay them more potentially. So whenever I see a lot of players entering the portal, to me, it comes down to a money issue based off of everything I've seen across the country. Unless you're like a Marshall, which just lost their head coach to Southern Miss, and a lot of those players left the team almost immediately, and a lot of them are expected to follow their coach down at Southern Miss. So this just isn't a good look for Arkansas. And personally, for me, someone who has ties to the Razorbacks, I don't follow the portal all that closely anyway. If I did, I would probably go insane. And God bless every fan out there that manages to keep up with this every day. I mean, I got a lot on my plate anyway with the playoff coming up and all these other feature stories and traveling I'm doing. And to see like 1,600, 1,700 players in the portal, and then those players going to other places, keeping track of all that is mind-boggling. And so it's just in a lot of ways, like, this just isn't sustainable in this sport. It just isn't. And coaches are getting out of the business or taking voluntary step down in their profession because they don't want to deal with this crap anymore. NIL, the portal, and it's got to be corrected. You can't get rid of it, but they got to figure out some guidelines for this. And They need the federal government to step in, and I don't. Again, that might be another year or two away. I know we've been saying that for 2 years, and we're going to keep saying that until something's done.
Yeah, and also to the point, and looking at it specifically from Arkansas, you think about the players that they had on the roster they were counting on next season. And last time we talked to you, you talked about as well. Sam Pittman, you said, he's like, hey, we got the money. We got the money. The question of a GM has been brought up because it doesn't look like the NIL rules are changing, at least not at this point in time. But the GM role has been brought up. Sam Pittman said in his press conference that they feel like him and Hunter Yurchek have talked, and it's fine for now. Maybe in April they hire one, which I didn't really understand. But either way, what are your thoughts of schools, especially big schools in the SEC, having a designated role, a designated GM to help handle a lot of these situations instead of just putting it all on the head coach and the coaches in general?
Oh, I didn't know Sam said that. Wow. A lot of coaches out there prepared for this the last year. They've hired GMs. They've hired front office personnel. They've been preparing for this with the NIL obviously going on now, but more importantly with revenue sharing coming up, because that is a huge undertaking. And I think you're making a mistake if you don't already have a GM on your campus running things in the front office. You need that. I point to schools like in Oklahoma State, for example. Mike Gundy, old school coach, we all know that. And he obviously doesn't really like the way things are going in college football now. But, a year ago, he went out and figured out, I just need to bring in an NFL front office. And that's what he did to prepare for all this. And I think every coaching staff, every athletics department needs to be doing that. And if you're not, I think you're making a big mistake, because I don't see how these coaches can take that on and just like say, hey, I'll deal with the agents. I'll deal with all these players and all that, in addition to running the program and obviously running practices and bowl practices and also recruiting high school kids. I mean, December is like the worst month ever every year for coaches. And I just don't see how you can navigate this right now without having a general manager or someone leading your department.
So also given it to the situation with Arkansas is that the bowl game, they are playing in a bowl game. I don't know if people even have paid attention, but they're playing in a Liberty Bowl. And Arkansas is among other teams. But just how do you combat this part of it, where I know you talked a little bit about the situation with Marshall opting out of the bowl game, but with Arkansas in particular, they're going to have guys out there that have played for the Razorbacks for the very first time, is what's going to remind me of. It's just so many new faces out there. Can there be anything done to where the bowl games can still be bowl games, have it happen, and then also be able to give the players the opportunities to get into the transfer portal if they want to? Because it just seems like the bowl games are already waning a little bit, but right now they're such an afterthought that it's pretty much going to turn into a glorified spring game between two teams, it seems like.
Yeah, and we've seen that already. We've seen the last couple of years teams playing their third and fourth stringers in games and it just not being either competitive or really all that interesting. And you're right, it's become like spring games, except you're playing against someone else. And the bowl folks aren't happy about it because they're just going to see dwindling ticket sales and potentially dwindling television ratings. It'll be interesting to see what the TV ratings are for some of these bowls in December this year, especially with some depleted rosters, whether people actually tune in, because that's where everybody's getting their money these days. What do you do to curb that? I mean, maybe, I'm just throwing ideas out there. Like maybe, if a player enters the portal on a team that's bowl eligible, maybe somehow have something in there, unless school starts at your new school during the bowl game or bowl preparation, you got to stay on campus and play in your bowl game. You're committed to that school through the end of the semester. You don't start at your new school until the next semester. So maybe they should find a way to be able to keep them on campus and play in their game, even if their heart's half in it or whatever. Maybe there's a way to do that. The other way, I think potentially, and it's just going to pull more money out of the bowl system's pockets, which they're not going to be happy with anyway, is maybe the bowls should directly pay players that play in the game themselves. We've seen that with some preseason like basketball tournaments, obviously with some NIL deals in Las Vegas. Maybe you can do that in the bowl system, because as it stands now, there's just not a lot of interest in several of these games, because their rosters are absolutely just decimated. And especially, there's not a lot of group of five fans out there, but there's a lot of group of five rosters that are just been obliterated because their star players, their top 5 players or so are going to get bigger paydays elsewhere. So they've left. And so what they built their entire team around is gone. And so you might have some teams out there that have won 9, 10, 11 games in the group of 5 going out there that'll look nothing like they did during the season. And that's unfortunate.
Well, another thing too, Brandon, and again, I feel like I'm asking about rules and regulations and what they could do, but it seems that coaches all understand it, fans all understand it, even people in your position understand it, that, tampering is a thing that goes on, and it seems prevalent, and not have to name any schools or anything specific because there's not really any evidence of it just yet. But and in your knowledge and what you've seen and people you've talked to and everything, just how prevalent is the tampering aspect of the transfer portal and NIL with schools? And if it's as prevalent as it is there anything that can be done about it? I know it happens in all sports. It's happened in NBA and in the NFL, but just how prevalent is it, and is there anything that can be done about it at this point?
I don't think so. There just isn't. Until this becomes actual professional model where there's collective bargaining and there's actual guidelines and also penalties in place that, if you're found tampering, you can do this or that. Same with, you see it in the NFL. There's nothing they can do. And practically every school, whether it's directly or indirectly, there's some tampering going on. And by indirectly, I mean, some of these players' agents will go talk to someone who's got some connections to another team and be like, hey, would they be interested maybe in him if he were to join the portal? And the coaches have no idea that's going on. So it's just confusing for everybody. But tampering certainly an issue. I remember, listen, Wake Forest coach Dave Clawson, he just stepped down here a couple days ago. And I remember a year ago and 2 years ago, he was telling me about tampering allegations and was being upfront about it, about people coming and stealing players from his roster at Wake Forest after they're winning 9, 10 games. And, some of these coaches, they're beaten down by it. And it's one of the big reasons why Dave Clawson stepped down at Wake Forest.
Yeah, it's evident, it's there, but I don't think there's anything going to be done about it too. But what will be pretty fun, on a more positive note, before I let you get out of here, Brandon, college football playoff. You talk about it. That is also a thing that is happening. First time ever, we're going to see 12 teams. It's officially set. I know that there's some things that people may like or dislike about the format and what's been set up for it. But I feel like this is one of the first times in a long time that I could look at 12 teams. I don't know if all 12 could win the national championship, but more than half of them I could totally see happening. Just how do you feel about the overall playoff format, but also who you're looking at to be the favorite and maybe a team that could end up shocking the world and winning a national championship?
Yeah, I think it's fairly wide open. Interestingly, Oregon, of course, being undefeated, they have the number 1 seed, but I think they actually had the most difficult draw. They could potentially have a rematch against Ohio State in that tight battle they had earlier this year, a 32-31 win for Oregon at home, and that will end up being in a neutral site. And it's in the quarterfinals. And then the semifinals get even more difficult. The team with the best draw, I think, is Penn State at the number 6 seed. They get SMU at home here on Saturday morning, and they've got a favorable draw from there. It'll be interesting to see with Georgia. Carson Beck, he's out for who knows how long after injuring his elbow in the SEC championship game. So what are they going to do at quarterback with the backup there? Does that change the offense a lot? I think it does. And they'll be facing the winner of Notre Dame, Indiana in the quarterfinals. So there's a lot of weird, interesting possibilities here. Right now, my pick to win the championship is Oregon. I think they're just the most balanced team out there. They got a lot of veteran leadership. They can stay healthy. I just like them overall, but that draw is very tricky. I also like Notre Dame quite a bit. And what they've got going on. I think they've flown on the radar. They've beaten the teams by an average of 26.8 points this year, which is the second best average in the country. And by the way, their first round opponent, Indiana, an in-state game. Indiana's number 1 in the nation in scoring margin this year. So you got the top 2 scoring margin teams in there facing each other, and also the 2 most opportunistic teams in the playoff as far as turnover margin. So a lot of common themes and storylines in this among all these teams, whether it's just takeaways, explosive offenses, but mostly teams that are just really good in the trenches. That's why SMU's in the playoffs, why Penn State's in the playoffs. That's why everybody is in there. Everybody's got those guys up front to get it done. As far as the format, it needs to be tweaked. They'll probably go to 14, which has been discussed quite a bit. I think you need to reseed things after on Sunday. And by that, I mean, right now it's set up to where the 5 highest ranked conference champions get into the field. And then the 4 highest ranked conference champions receive a first round bye. So you see teams that might be ranked, number 6 in the rankings or whatever, get pushed up to number 3 because they get that first round bye. I think what we need to do is just get rid of the automatic qualifier there where you get a first round bye if you're one of the 4 highest ranked champions, and just like the NCAA basketball tournament, just set it up to where if you win your conference championship among the 5 top conferences, you're guaranteed a spot in the field, but your ranking's your ranking. So you won't be able to be pushed up in the rankings, so to speak. And the ones who get the first round byes are just the top 4 teams. So if that's 3 SEC teams one year, tough luck. If it's 3 Big Ten teams every year, tough luck. But I think that's how it needs to be. It's way too complicated. Like, I can't imagine like a casual fan when they watch that ESPN broadcast and they're ranking them out, and then they have to put 2 rankings next to their names in the bracket to show like what their actual seed is and what their ranking is. Like, college football just can't get out of its way most of the time, and they just need to simplify everything. Everything needs to be simplified. Everything just is too damn complicated, and it extends all the way to the CFP.
I know. It's just like you think something so simple that there's so many different teams and so many different leagues that have done this for a long time that they could just,
Well, it's because there's just so many damn voices in the room, and so many of them want it their way, and then they have to compromise. It's just, listen, we need some type of federal legislation with all that other stuff, transfer portal, NIL, and all that. And then after that, they just need to have a football commissioner. Yes. Have someone oversee it all. But the problem is that these conference commissioners don't want to cede control. They don't want their power to go away. So they don't want to answer to someone. They don't want to answer to a football commissioner. But we need it. Football's unwieldy now. It's gotten too big for its own good. And we're starting to see kind of the foundation crack a little bit. And I don't want to see that thing crack so much where it falls into the ocean, because we're going to get there in 5 or 10 years unless there's some changes made.
Yeah, there could be some things that once they're gone, you don't get them back.
Right.
And that's what you want to avoid at all cost, because college football is great. It's fun. We love it, and we want to continue to love it. And listen, it's going to change, but it doesn't need to change in every way and so fast and so rapidly. But it should be interesting here, not only in the next couple of weeks, but also in the next few years for college football. But the guy that's going to always talk about it, of course, is Brandon Marcel. You can follow him on Twitter or X at @bmarcel. You can also check him out at CBS Sports and 24/7 Sports. But Brandon, as always, man, we appreciate you joining us. Have a happy holiday season, my man, and we'll be catching up with you next year, all right?
All right, we'll do. See you, John.
And that was Brandon Marcel. We appreciate him joining us and hanging out with us and talking a little bit about everything going on. I did, we talked obviously our own on the portal and everything, but I will say his college football playoff thing is something I think needs to happen, where automatic qualifiers needs to be, and you need to treat it like the NCAA tournament and not have teams like Boise State getting a bye or whoever. I'm just saying, of automatic qualifiers getting a bye that don't need it. But yeah, I'm excited though to see how the playoffs go this year.
Yeah, me too. I think you kind of knew when they started this thing that there were going to be certain deals they just wouldn't realize until it got to the point of actually making this legitimate for the first time, and they'd have to go back and make some changes. That's kind of where they're at. But I hope that they just kind of figure it out and can roll with something that works, as opposed to doing like what they continue to try to do with my NCAA tournament, which is got to expand it. Got to expand it. We got to go to 72, got to go to 76. No, the hell you don't. Leave it alone. It's a beautiful thing. And I love it. I don't want to mess with it, but they're just hell bent on doing so. Money's kind of involved in that. I think the college football playoff is cool. It's a great concept. Agree with a lot of things Marcel has said about the tweaks and stuff that you can make, but then just figure it out and then leave it the hell alone, please.
Yeah, I think they're on the right track with the playoff. I think 12 is a very good number. It's a number that I think they should stick with for a while. I agree on maybe you shouldn't give teams like Arizona State and Boise State like automatic buys. I think you should get an automatic bid, but I don't know if seeding should. I mean, because that's how it is in the NCAA basketball tournament. Like you said, you get the automatic bid that doesn't guarantee you're going to be a 2 seed or a 4 seed. You know, you sometimes might be a 13 seed. I think it should probably be that way. And I think, again, I think they're closer on the playoff thing than I think they are on the NIL and the portal and all this other stuff. There's plenty of changes that have happened in college football and that are going to continue to happen. I think big picture, and I think Marcel obviously agrees, is the idea that they went to a few years ago of making December the month that everything happens was just as dumb as it could possibly, like one of the dumbest thing that's happened. That's one of the worst things. We can talk about NIL and how it's changed the game. We can talk about the portal. The idea that December has now become the time when rosters are ruined and need to be rebuilt all in this window here. I don't know how they're going to effectively be able to move that around where, back in the day, February was kind of, that was the National Signing Day. We all were kind of cool with that. And there was less portal action. Moving it all up to where it all takes place in December, that's a setup that is just never going to work well. And it's a big reason why you're seeing some of this. And I don't blame the coaches like Clausen or whoever that are stepping down and just being like, I'm out of here. This sucks. Because December, man, you know, the holidays are great, but send a prayer to your local college football coach. Even if you hate them or love them or whatever, their lives are having to be miserable this time of year. And I've said it a few times. I don't envy them. And there's definitely plenty of changes that need to be made. But I think with the playoff, I think college football is on the cusp of being perfect. Like they're really, they're not too far away from having that completely sorted out. Now, if they can maybe move the windows around for some of these portal actions and signing days and all that and signing periods, I think you'll be on track to maybe having college football not be ruined.
That's what we're hopeful for. But hey, we appreciate the discussions anyways, because we'll probably talk more about the playoff too tomorrow on Inside Arkansas Live, since there'll actually be a game that night. But then again, who knows what's going to happen within 24 hours with this portal and some of the new additions that will probably be made. But guys, any final thoughts before we roll out of here at least for the moment, in case anything else happens?
Good Lord, no. We've been talking nonstop since 9 o'clock this morning. I'm ready to give the vocal cords a rest before we do this simulation. So
yeah.
I would just like to say farewell to the Kendrick Law era at Arkansas. It was a great run we had, pretending like he was a wide receiver one. It appears Arkansas fans will not have to be doing that mental gymnastics. It appears he's headed to Kentucky, and we wish him well.
Well, there you go. So, well, hey, if anything changes, though, we'll be sure to let you know here on Inside Arkansas, because we are always on top of it when it comes to all the latest and breaking news when it comes to transfer portal and everything else. So be sure to subscribe to us here on Inside Arkansas. Hit that bell at the top so you'll be notified anytime we go live. So that way you know something big's going on whenever we go live. So be sure to do that. Follow us on our social media at Inside Arkansas, and be sure to check out our website at InsideArkansas.com for all the latest and greatest up-to-date information on all things Razorbacks, and we will keep it going from there. So for Andrew Ellis and Curtis Wilkerson, I am John Neighbors. Same sports show, same sports channel tomorrow at noon. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. We'll see you when we see you.